The lobby of the Elena Grand smelled of white lilies, my late wife's favorite flower. But beneath that floral scent, there was a rot I hadn't noticed from my penthouse office. I stood at the reception desk, disguised in a stained raincoat and muddy boots, clutching a handful of crumpled cash. The receptionist, a woman with a smile as sharp as a scalpel, didn't just ignore me. She was too busy scrolling through her phone, showing a photo to the manager beside her. "Look at this old hag in the painting," she giggled, pointing to the massive portrait of Elena hanging behind the desk, the portrait I commissioned the day she died. "She looks like she should be scrubbing toilets, not owning the building." Talk about trash with cash. My heart stopped. They weren't just insulting a customer. They were spitting on the memory of the woman who built this empire with her bare, calloused hands. The cemetery was quiet on Thursday mornings. I preferred it that way. The older graves had a stillness to them, a peace that the newer plots, with their fresh flowers and sobbing visitors, lacked. Elena's headstone was neither old nor new. 3 years. 3 years since the cancer had taken her, and still, every morning I woke up reaching for her side of the bed. "Happy anniversary, my love," I whispered, kneeling on the damp grass. I placed the bouquet of white lilies against the marble. 27 years we'd been married. 27 years that felt simultaneously like a lifetime and a single, fleeting moment. The engraving was simple, the way she would have wanted it. Elena Maria Blackwood, 1969 to 2022. She made every place feel like home. I traced the letters with my finger, the gold leaf cold under my touch. Home. That word meant something different now. The penthouse felt like a mausoleum. The office felt like a cage. And the hotel, the Elena Grand, the crown jewel of Blackwood hospitality, the tribute I'd built in her honor, felt like it was slipping through my fingers. "I got a letter yesterday," I told her, speaking to the stone as if she could hear me. Perhaps she could. I like to believe she could. From a guest. Anonymous. They said the hotel has lost its soul. Can you imagine? Your hotel, Elena. The place we built together. A breeze rustled through the elm trees overhead, scattering a few early autumn leaves across her grave. I didn't brush them away. Elena had loved fall. She said it was honest. No pretense, just nature showing its true colors before the long sleep of winter. "The numbers are good," I continued, my voice barely above a murmur. "Profit margins are the highest they've been in 5 years. Sebastian, you remember I hired him 2 years ago? He's been implementing all these efficiency protocols. Streamlining operations, he calls it. The board loves him. But something feels wrong. Off." I pulled the letter from my coat pocket, unfolding it carefully. The paper was expensive, heavy cardstock, the kind our hotel used for VIP correspondence. But the words were written in a shaky, elderly hand. "Mr. Blackwood, I have been a patron of the Elena Grand since it opened 15 years ago. I proposed to my wife in your restaurant. I celebrated my daughter's wedding in your ballroom. I have always felt welcomed, cherished even, by your establishment. But my most recent visit has broken my heart. The staff have become cold, dismissive, even cruel. I watched a young receptionist laugh at an elderly woman who couldn't afford the inflated minibar prices. I saw a manager berate a housekeeper to tears in front of guests. This is not the hotel that Elena Blackwood would have built. This is not the legacy she deserves. I write this anonymously because I fear retaliation, but I write it because someone must. Your hotel has lost its soul, Mr. Blackwood. And if you don't act soon, it will lose its heart as well. A concerned friend." The letter had arrived at my personal office, not the hotel. Someone had gone to great lengths to ensure I saw it. Someone who cared. Someone who remembered what the Elena Grand was supposed to be. "They're right, aren't they?" I said to the headstone. "I've been hiding, burying myself in spreadsheets and quarterly reports while your legacy crumbles. I'm sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry." The truth was, I'd been avoiding the hotel. Every marble column, every crystal chandelier, every carefully arranged bouquet of white lilies reminded me of her. She'd chosen the color scheme, warm golds and soft creams, inviting rather than intimidating. She'd insisted on the oversized portrait in the lobby, not of herself, but I'd commissioned it after she died. "So people remember that this place was built on love, not money," I told the artist. But what good was a portrait if the people beneath it had forgotten what love meant? I stayed at the grave for another hour, talking to her about everything and nothing. About the board meeting next week. About the new hotel we were planning in Prague. About how much I missed her laugh, the way she'd snort when something genuinely surprised her, unladylike and perfect. Finally, as the sun climbed higher and the first tour groups began filtering through the cemetery gates, I stood. My knees protested, 55 years old and already feeling ancient. I'm going to fix this, I promised her. I'm going to find out what's really happening at the Elena Grand. And I'm going to make sure your name means something again. I kissed my fingers and pressed them to the top of her headstone, then turned and walked back to my car, a modest sedan, not the company limousine. Elena had always hated ostentatious displays of wealth. Money is a tool, Julian, she used to say, not a trophy. As I drove away from the cemetery, I made a decision. The quarterly reports and guest satisfaction surveys weren't telling me the truth. The management memos and staff evaluations were too sanitized, too perfect. If I wanted to know what was really happening at the Elena Grand, I couldn't walk through the front door as Julian Blackwood, CEO. I needed to see it the way Elena would have, from the ground up, as one of the invisible people. I needed to go undercover. The transformation began in my study that evening. I stood before the full-length mirror, assessing myself with a critical eye. Julian Blackwood stared back, silver hair perfectly trimmed, clean-shaven jaw, tailored Tom Ford suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I looked every inch the billionaire hotelier. I looked nothing like the man I used to be. 30 years ago, I'd been a bellhop at the Grandeur Plaza, a mid-tier hotel in the business district. I'd worn a polyester uniform that made me sweat through every shift. My shoes had holes in the soles that I'd covered with cardboard. I'd taken the night bus home to a studio apartment I shared with two other guys, sleeping on a mattress on the floor. That's where I'd met Elena. She'd been a housekeeper on the 7th floor, her dark hair always pulled back in a practical bun, her hands perpetually red from cleaning solutions. She'd smiled at me in the staff cafeteria one day, and I'd been lost. We'd married 6 months later in a courthouse ceremony, with our combined life savings barely enough to cover a modest honeymoon in Atlantic City. From nothing to everything. I murmured to my reflection, and now I need to be nothing again. I opened the closet in the guest room, the one Elena had used for her charity work. She'd volunteered at homeless shelters every Thursday, and she'd kept a collection of donated clothes for the people she helped. I'd never had the heart to throw them away. The trench coat was perfect, oversized, slightly damp-smelling, with a tear in the left pocket. I found a pair of old spectacles in a drawer, the kind you could buy at a drugstore, with thick plastic frames that magnified my eyes. A battered suitcase from our pre-wealth days, held together with duct tape and prayers. And finally, a wool cap that I could pull low over my forehead. I dressed slowly, methodically stripping away the trappings of Julian Blackwood. The Patek Philippe watch went into the safe. The Italian leather wallet with its black Amex card joined it. I kept only a handful of crumpled 20s and a few coins, the kind of money a man on a fixed income might carry. The face was harder. I had a makeup artist I trusted. She'd done special effects for a film my company had partially funded. I called her, swearing her to secrecy, and she arrived within the hour. Mr. Blackwood, she said, eyeing me with professional interest. This is certainly a change from the usual red carpet prep. What exactly are we going for? Invisible, I said. I want to look like someone people step over on the sidewalk. She nodded, understanding without judgment. For the next hour, she worked magic. Latex prosthetics added bags under my eyes and jowls to my jawline. Makeup aged me another 10 years, adding liver spots to my hands and a sallow tint to my skin. She rubbed dirt into my fingernails and mussed my hair, leaving it greasy and unkempt. When she finished, I stared at the stranger in the mirror. He looked tired, defeated, poor. Perfect, I breathed. She packed up her kit, pausing at the door. Whatever you're doing, Mr. Blackwood, I hope you find what you're looking for. So do I. After she left, I practiced. I walked with a slight limp, favoring my left leg. I hunched my shoulders, making myself smaller, less noticeable. I cleared my throat and spoke in a rougher voice, adding a tremor of uncertainty. I'd like a room, please, I said to the mirror, watching Arthur Penhaligon take shape. Just for one night. Do you have anything available? Arthur Penhaligon. I'd chosen the name carefully. It belonged to a character in a book Elena had loved, a man who stumbled into a fantastic world and had to find his way home. Appropriate. I spent the rest of the evening researching. I looked up cheap motels in the area, memorizing their rates and amenities so I could compare them to the Elena Grand if asked. I studied the public bus routes, planning my journey, and I read and reread the anonymous letter until I had it memorized. Your hotel has lost its soul, Mr. Blackwood. Then I'll find it, I said to the empty room, or I'll burn the whole thing down and start over. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake in the master bedroom, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Elena. She would have loved this plan. She'd always believed in seeing things for yourself, and not trusting second-hand reports. If you want to know how your restaurant tastes, she'd once told me when we were planning the hotel's dining room. You eat there as a regular customer, not as the owner. People lie to power, Julian. They tell you what you want to hear, but they tell the truth to people who can't hurt them. At dawn, I rose and dressed in Arthur's clothes. I left my phone on the nightstand, Julian Blackwood's phone, with its endless stream of emails and messages. I took only a cheap burner phone I'd picked up at a convenience store, programmed with a single number, my personal attorney, in case of emergency. The walk to the bus stop was illuminating. People looked through me. A woman jogging past wrinkled her nose at my appearance. A businessman in a Mercedes nearly clipped me as I crossed the street, too focused on his phone call to notice the pedestrian. This, I realized, was what Elena had experienced every day before we made our fortune. This casual invisibility, this assumption that you didn't matter because you didn't have money. The bus ride took 40 minutes. I sat in the back, watching the city transform from residential neighborhoods to commercial districts. The Elena Grand rose in the distance, its limestone facade glowing in the morning sun. It was beautiful, a perfect blend of classical architecture and modern luxury, with the Blackwood Hospitality logo discreetly placed above the entrance. My legacy, Elena's memorial, and according to the letter, a place that had forgotten what it was supposed to represent. I got off the bus 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance. My heart pounded as I approached the brass-framed revolving doors. This was it, the moment of truth. I took a deep breath, adjusted my greasy cap, and stepped forward. Arthur Penhaligon was about to check into the Elena Grand. The doorman didn't open the door for me. I stood there, waiting, as he rushed past me to assist a young woman stepping out of a Bentley. She couldn't have been more than 25, dressed in designer clothes with a small dog tucked under one arm. The doorman practically bowed as he helped her with her Louis Vuitton luggage. "Welcome to the Elena Grand, Ms. Chun," he said smoothly. "So wonderful to see you again." I watched him fawn over her for a solid 2 minutes before I finally pushed through the revolving door myself, my battered suitcase catching on the frame and nearly tripping me. The lobby stole my breath, just as it always did. Soaring ceilings with gold leaf detailing. Crystal chandeliers that Elena and I had picked out together in Venice. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine. And there, dominating the wall behind the reception desk, was the portrait. Elena smiled down at the lobby, captured in oil paint wearing the simple blue dress she'd worn to our 20th anniversary dinner. The artist had perfectly captured her kind eyes, the laugh lines at the corners of her mouth, the slight redness of her hands that no amount of expensive lotion had ever quite erased. Those hands had cleaned toilets, scrubbed floors, and built an empire. I'd specifically asked the artist not to hide them. White lilies, her favorite, sat in enormous vases on every available surface. The scent was overwhelming, bittersweet. I'd mandated that the hotel always have fresh lilies in the lobby, changed daily. It was costing us a fortune, but I didn't care. I stood there for a moment, just looking at her portrait, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. Then I forced myself to look away, to focus on my mission. The reception desk was a masterpiece of black marble and brass fixtures. Behind it stood 2 people, a young woman in a crisp white blouse and black skirt, and a man in an expensive suit who I recognized as Sebastian Vane, the general manager. The woman, her name tag read Jessica, was on her phone, thumb scrolling rapidly through what looked like Instagram. She had the kind of beauty that came from good genetics and better cosmetic surgery. Perfect skin, impossibly white teeth, hair that fell in artful waves. She looked like she belonged on a runway, not behind a hotel reception desk. Sebastian stood beside her, equally absorbed in his tablet. He was tall, angular, with the kind of chiseled features that suggested he spent more time at the gym than in his office. His suit was Brioni. I recognized the cut. $15,000, easily. More than some of our housekeepers made in 6 months. I approached the desk slowly, my limp pronounced. Neither of them looked up. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Finally, I cleared my throat. Excuse me. Jessica's eyes flicked up, then immediately back to her phone. We're fully booked, she said without actually looking at me. I haven't asked for a room yet, I said, keeping Arthur's trembling voice steady. She sighed, a sound of pure annoyance, and finally set her phone down. Her gaze traveled over me, the stained coat, the muddy boots, the duct-taped suitcase, and her lip curled slightly. Sir, as I said, we're fully booked. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the Motel 6, down on 8th Street. It's much more affordable. I pulled out my crumpled bills. I have cash. I just need one night. A small room would be fine. I don't need anything fancy. Sebastian looked up from his tablet, his expression one of barely concealed disdain. The Elena Grand starts at $600 per night, sir, for our most basic accommodations. I don't think I can pay, I interrupted, laying $600 on the marble counter. The bills were wrinkled, some of them torn and taped back together, but they were legal tender. Jessica and Sebastian exchanged a look. Something passed between them, a silent communication that made my stomach tighten. As I said, Jessica repeated, her voice taking on a harder edge, we're fully booked. The system shows no availability. I pulled out the burner phone. That's strange, because your website shows 12 rooms available. I turned the screen to show them. I checked before getting on the bus, and I'd refreshed it just moments ago in the lobby. See? Right here. 12 standard rooms, 3 suites. Jessica's perfect face flushed slightly. The website is outdated. IT has been having issues. The actual inventory is fully booked. I'd like to book online then, I said pleasantly. Right now? While I'm standing here. Sebastian stepped forward, and I caught a whiff of his cologne, something expensive and aggressive. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disrupting our other guests. I looked around the empty lobby. What other guests? Security, Sebastian said sharply, not answering my question. He pressed a button under the desk. This was it. The moment I could reveal myself, pull back the curtain, and watch them scramble. But something held me back. The letter had mentioned more than just discrimination at the front desk. It had mentioned cruelty, systematic mistreatment. I needed to see more. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening in Elena's hotel. So I backed away from the desk, holding up my hands in a placating gesture. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I'll wait in the lobby for a moment. Catch my breath. Then I'll go. See that you do, Jessica said, already picking up her phone again. I shuffled over to one of the plush armchairs near the portrait of Elena and sank into it. My heart was racing, adrenaline and anger mixing in my veins. They'd turn me away. Not because there were no rooms. There were 12 available, according to our own website. But because I looked poor. Because I didn't fit the image Sebastian wanted for his hotel. I looked up at Elena's portrait. Even in paint, her eyes seemed sad. I'm sorry, I whispered to her. I'm so sorry I let this happen. From my position in the chair, I could hear Jessica and Sebastian's conversation. They weren't even trying to be quiet. God, can you believe the nerve? Jessica said, trying to book a room with crumpled up drug money, or whatever. The neighborhood's going downhill, Sebastian replied. We're going to need to hire additional security. Keep the riffraff out. At least he didn't try to sleep in the lobby. Last week we had to call the cops to remove some homeless woman who... She stopped mid-sentence. I followed her gaze to see a young man in a bellhop uniform approaching me. He couldn't have been more than 22, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. Sir, he said softly, crouching down so he was at my eye level. Sir, are you okay? You look a little pale. It took me a moment to realize he was talking to me. This young man, this employee of my hotel, was showing me more concern in 10 seconds than my general manager had in 10 minutes. I'm fine, I stammered. Just a bit tired from the bus ride. Here, he said, pulling out a bottle of water from behind his back. It's hot out. You should stay hydrated. And he glanced back at the reception desk, then quickly pressed something into my hand. A cookie, wrapped in a napkin. From the VIP welcome basket. Don't tell anyone. My throat tightened. Thank you. What's your name? Leo, he said. Leo Santos. Is there anything else I can help you with? Do you need directions somewhere? Before I could answer, Sebastian's voice cut across the lobby. Santos. What did I tell you about fraternizing with non-guests? Leo stood up quickly, his cheeks flushing. I was just helping. Get back to work. The luggage for the Chun party needs to be taken up immediately. Yes, sir. Leo gave me an apologetic look, then hurried toward the elevator bank where several designer suitcases waited. I sat there, the water bottle and cookie in my hands, watching Leo work. He moved efficiently, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing back at Sebastian as if expecting another reprimand. This young man had shown me kindness, had seen a human being instead of an inconvenience. He was exactly the kind of employee Elena would have cherished. And Sebastian was clearly trying to stamp that kindness out of him. I stayed in the lobby for another hour, pretending to doze in the chair, but actually watching, observing. I saw Sebastian berate a housekeeper for taking too long on the third floor. I saw Jessica roll her eyes at an elderly couple who asked for help with the Wi-Fi password. I saw a maintenance worker nearly invisible as he polished the brass fixtures, ignored by everyone. But worst of all, at one point I heard Jessica and a guest services representative talking near the elevator. I still think we should move that painting, the guest services rep said, a woman in her 30s with severe glasses. It doesn't really fit the aesthetic anymore. Too rustic. Jessica laughed. God, I know. But Blackwood has this weird emotional attachment to it. Like, we get it. Your wife was a maid or whatever. But this is supposed to be a luxury hotel. That portrait screams scholarship student at a country club. I gripped the arms of the chair so hard my knuckles went white. The cookie in my lap crumbled under my clenched fist. They were talking about Elena. My Elena. The woman who had scrubbed their floors so they could have paychecks. The woman whose vision had created every beautiful detail of this building. They were reducing her to a punchline, an embarrassment. I forced myself to breathe, to wait, to watch. Because if this was what they said in public, in the middle of the day, what were they saying in private? I needed to get a room. I needed to see this from the inside. I pulled out the burner phone and opened the Elena Grand's website. Right there, in front of Jessica and Sebastian, I booked a room. The cheapest one available, a classic queen, 6th floor, city view. $650 for one night. The booking confirmation came through immediately. I stood up, walked back to the desk, and placed my phone on the marble counter. I have a reservation, I said quietly. Jessica looked at the screen, and I watched the color drain from her face. Then it came back, red and angry. Fine, she bit out. She snatched a key card from the drawer and slapped it on the counter. Room 604. Elevators are to your left. Thank you, I said, in Arthur's humble voice. Whatever, she muttered, already turning away. Sebastian didn't say anything. He just looked at me with undisguised contempt, as if I was a piece of trash that had blown in off the street. I took the key card in my suitcase and walked toward the elevators. As I passed Elena's portrait, I paused, looking up at her. I'll fix this, I promised silently. I swear to you, I'll fix this. The elevator doors closed, and I allowed myself a moment of weakness. I leaned against the wall, my chest tight, my eyes burning. They'd forgotten. In pursuit of profit margins and elevated experiences and luxury aesthetics, they'd forgotten what the Elena Grand was supposed to be. A place where everyone was treated with dignity. A place where kindness mattered more than wealth. A place that honored the memory of a woman who believed that hospitality meant making people feel at home, not making them feel small. Well, I was about to remind them. The elevator opened on the 6th floor, and I stepped out into Arthur Penhaligon's room. But Julian Blackwood was already planning his reckoning. Room 604 was barely larger than a closet. I designed the Elena Grand with a range of accommodations, from accessible, classic rooms to palatial suites, but I'd never actually stayed in one of the smallest rooms. Now I understood why the website called them cozy, real estate speak for cramped. The bed took up most of the space, with perhaps 3 feet of clearance on either side. A narrow desk was jammed against one wall, a chair that didn't quite fit pushed under it. The bathroom door opened inward, which meant I had to stand on the bed to let it swing fully open. The window looked out over a service alley in the back of an office building. For $650. I set my suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed, taking it all in. The room was clean. I'd give the housekeeping staff that much. The linens were crisp, the bathroom spotless. But the paint on the ceiling had water stains, suggesting a leak that had been painted over rather than properly fixed. The air conditioning unit rattled ominously when I turned it on. And this city view was a charitable description of what was essentially a view of other buildings' garbage collection areas. This was what Jessica and Sebastian were charging premium prices for. This was what they were calling luxury. I pulled out the burner phone and started taking photos. The water damage, the rattling AC, the laughable window view. Evidence. A knock at the door interrupted my documentation. Housekeeping, a woman's voice called. I opened the door to find a Latina woman in her 50s, pushing a cart laden with towels and cleaning supplies. Her name tag read Maria. Her eyes were tired, her hands red and chapped, the same hands Elena used to have. I'm sorry, she said immediately, starting to back away. I didn't realize the room was occupied. The system said it was empty. It's fine, I said. Please, come in. I actually wanted some extra towels if you have them. She looked surprised, as if guests didn't usually speak to her politely. Of course. Let me get them for you. She stepped inside, moving efficiently despite the cramped space. As she worked, I noticed the way she winced when she bent down, the stiffness in her movements that spoke of long hours and physical labor. Have you worked here long? I asked. She paused, uncertain if she should answer. Then, perhaps deciding there was no harm in it, she nodded. 15 years. Since the hotel opened. 15 years. She would have been hired by Elena, back when we personally interviewed every staff member. You must have seen a lot of changes, I said carefully. Something flickered across her face, sadness, maybe, or resignation. Yes, many changes. For better or worse? She looked at me sharply, as if trying to determine if this was a trap. Then she glanced at my shabby coat hanging on the chair, my muddy boots by the door, and seemed to make a decision. Mrs. Blackwood, she said softly. She used to know all our names. She would ask about our families, our children. She fought for us to have health insurance, good health insurance, and a Christmas bonus. She said we were the heart of the hotel. Maria's eyes glistened. After she died, Mr. Vane took over. He says we cost too much. The bonuses stopped. The insurance got worse. And he tells us we should be invisible. That we shouldn't talk to guests unless they talk to us first. That we're here to clean, not to chat. My jaw clenched. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, sir. She finished stacking the towels and prepared to leave. I should go? I have 16 more rooms to clean before my shift ends. 16 rooms? In how many hours? 6 hours remaining. 6 hours to clean 16 rooms to the Elena Grand's exacting standards. That was barely 20 minutes per room, accounting for travel time between floors. It was impossible, or at least impossible to do well without cutting corners or injuring yourself. Maria, I said, pulling out a $20 bill. Thank you for the towels. She looked at the money, then at me, confused. Sir, you don't have to. Please. I insist. She took it hesitantly, as if expecting me to snatch it back. Thank you. You're very kind. After she left, I sat back down on the bed, my mind churning. 16 rooms in 6 hours. No bonuses. Worse insurance. Staff told to be invisible. This was Sebastian's efficiency protocol. Squeeze more productivity out of fewer workers, paying them less, and pocket the difference. I spent the rest of the afternoon wandering the hotel, observing. Arthur Penhaligon was invisible in the best possible way. Staff ignored me, guests looked through me, and I was able to see everything. I saw a housekeeper crying in a stairwell, her hands bleeding from what looked like chemical burns. I saw Sebastian yell at a bellhop for smiling too much at a guest. This isn't Disneyland, Santos. We're selling sophistication, not friendliness. I saw Jessica charge a confused elderly man $50 for a bottle of water from his minibar, claiming it was premium imported spring water, when I knew for a fact we bought it in bulk for $2 a bottle. But I also saw Leo. He was everywhere, seemingly doing the work of 3 people. Carrying luggage, hailing cabs, helping a blind woman navigate to the restaurant, explaining the local attractions to a family of tourists. And through it all, he smiled. Genuinely smiled, like he actually cared about these strangers. At one point, I watched him spend 20 minutes helping an elderly woman figure out her smartphone so she could video call her granddaughter. There was no tip in it. The woman had already checked out and was just waiting for her ride in the lobby. But Leo sat with her, patient and kind, showing her how to work the app over and over until she got it. When he finally helped her outside to her waiting car, I heard her say, Young man, you've restored my faith in this city. Thank you. Leo's smile could have lit up the lobby. My pleasure, Mrs. Chun. Have a safe trip home. As he turned back inside, I saw Sebastian waiting for him, arms crossed. Santos. My office. Now. I drifted closer, pretending to examine a brochure for a museum tour, but really eavesdropping on the conversation happening through Sebastian's half-open office door. That's the third time this week I've caught you wasting time on nonsense. Sebastian's voice was cold. Your job is to move luggage from point A to point B, not to be a tech support helpline for senile old women. She needed help, Leo said quietly. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes you should have spent helping actual guests. Paying guests. She was a guest. She stayed here for 3 nights. And she's already checked out, which means she's no longer our problem. Santos, I don't think you understand what we're trying to build here. The Elena Grand is not a community center. It's an exclusive luxury experience. Our guests expect a certain level of service, yes, but they also expect efficiency. They expect sophistication. They don't want to see the help acting like they're best friends with everyone who walks through the door. Mrs. Blackwood always said, Mrs. Blackwood is dead. The words were harsh, brutal, and Mr. Blackwood has given me full operational authority over this property. I'm modernizing our approach, bringing us into the 21st century. That means you need to decide if you're part of the future of this hotel or part of its past. There was a long silence. I understand, Leo finally said. Good. You're dismissed. Leo walked out of the office, his shoulders slumped, the light gone from his eyes. He nearly ran into me, apologized automatically, and then disappeared into the back hallways without seeming to recognize me from earlier. I stood there, trembling with rage. Mrs. Blackwood is dead. Yes, she was. But her memory wasn't. Her legacy wasn't. And the values she'd instilled in this hotel, the whole goddamn reason I'd built it in the first place, weren't supposed to be dead either. I returned to my room and paced the tiny space like a caged animal. I wanted to march down to Sebastian's office and fire him immediately. I wanted to call an emergency board meeting and expose every single cut corner, every mistreated employee, every overcharged guest. But I needed more. I needed irrefutable evidence that the rot went all the way through, that this wasn't just one bad manager, but a systemic cultural failure. So I waited, and I watched, and I listened. At midnight, unable to sleep on the lumpy mattress, I went down to the lobby. It was mostly empty except for Jessica at the front desk, looking bored, and a night security guard dozing in a chair. And then I saw it happen. A young couple approached the desk, the woman clearly pregnant and exhausted, the man trying to hold her up while managing their luggage. They looked working class, clean but inexpensive clothes, a well-used minivan visible through the lobby windows. Excuse me, the man said. We have a reservation. Last name Morrison. Jessica didn't even look up from her phone. 1 moment. They waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 5. Please, the woman said, her voice strained. I really need to sit down. Jessica sighed dramatically and finally checked the computer. Morrison? Yes, here it is. King bed, 3 nights. That'll be $1,950. The website said $1,700. The man said, confused. Resort fee. Parking. Municipal tourism tax. It's all in the fine print. But we budgeted for $1,700. We're here for the hospital. My wife has a high-risk pregnancy and, sir, I can't help you if you didn't read the booking terms. If you can't pay, I'll have to cancel your reservation. The woman looked like she might cry. The man pulled out his wallet, counting bills with shaking hands. I couldn't take it anymore. I approached the desk, still in my Arthur costume, and cleared my throat. Excuse me. Jessica looked at me with undisguised contempt. What? I couldn't help overhearing. I'm actually checking out early. My room is paid through tomorrow night. Why don't they take it? Room 604. Jessica's eyes narrowed. That's not how it works. Why not? I paid for it. I'm not using it. Let them have it. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your room before I call security. The pregnant woman put a hand on my arm. Thank you for trying, she whispered. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. The Morrisons eventually paid the inflated rate, the man handing over a credit card with visible reluctance. As Jessica processed the payment, I heard her mutter to the night clerk, God, poor people are so exhausting. Why do they even try to stay at nice hotels? I returned to my room. Let the Morrisons have whatever rest they could get on the 6th floor, and I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would end this. But tonight, I would gather one final piece of evidence. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every creak of the building, every footstep in the hallway reminded me that this was Elena's dream being corrupted. By 5 a.m., I'd made 17 pages of notes on the burner phone, documenting every instance of mistreatment, every overcharge, every cruel word. But I needed something bigger, something that would justify not just firing Sebastian and Jessica, but completely restructuring the hotel's management culture. At 7 a.m., I went down to the lobby. I was still in my Arthur costume, but I'd made myself look even more disheveled. I'd rubbed dirt on my face from the fire escape, mussed my hair even more, and added a slight tremor to my hands. Leo was at the desk, apparently covering the early shift before the day receptionist arrived. When he saw me, his face brightened. "Mr. Penhaligon, good morning. How did you sleep?" The kindness in his voice nearly broke me. Here was one good person in this entire operation, and Sebastian was systematically trying to crush his spirit. "Not well," I admitted. "The air conditioning was quite loud." "Oh no, I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can get maintenance to look at it. Or perhaps we could move you to a different room." "That's very kind, but I'll be checking out soon anyway." I was actually hoping to speak with the general manager. Leo's expression shifted, worry creeping in. "Mr. Vane doesn't usually come in until 9, but I can leave him a message." "No, that's all right. I'll catch him later." I paused. "Leo, can I ask you something? Why do you work here?" He looked surprised by the question. I like helping people. My abuela always said that hospitality is about making someone feel like they're part of your family, even if you just met them. When I first got this job, Mrs. Blackwood, the owner's wife, she interviewed me personally. She said she could teach me the technical stuff, but she couldn't teach kindness. Said I had to already have that. His eyes grew distant. She was the kindest person I ever met. She remembered my grandmother's name, asked about her dialysis treatments, sent flowers when she passed away. My throat tightened. That sounded exactly like Elena. "She sounds wonderful," I managed. "She was. Things changed after she died. Mr. Vane, he's all about efficiency and profit margins. He says I'm too soft, that I need to be more professional. But..." He looked around, then leaned in conspiratorially. "I don't think Mrs. Blackwood would have wanted that. I think she'd want us to keep being kind." "Then why don't you leave? Find another hotel." Leo shrugged. "Because maybe if I stay, I can keep a little bit of what she built alive. Someone has to, right?" In that moment, I wanted to hug this young man and tell him everything. Tell him that Elena would have loved him, that he was exactly the kind of employee we'd always hoped to hire, that his kindness wasn't a weakness but the very foundation of what hospitality should be. Instead, I just said, "Thank you, Leo, for the water yesterday, for the cookie, for being kind to an old man. Anytime, Mr. Penhaligon. Anytime." I retreated to a corner of the lobby and waited for Sebastian to arrive. He swept in at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before his official start time, already on his phone. He was dressed impeccably, another expensive suit, probably chiton this time, hair perfectly styled. He looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, not like someone who was supposed to be running a hospitality business. He went straight to his office without acknowledging Leo or any of the other staff. I gave him 10 minutes to settle in, then I followed. His office was obscene. When I designed the management suite, I'd intended it to be functional. A desk, some filing cabinets, a small seating area for staff meetings. Sebastian had transformed it into a personal throne room. There was a full bar in the corner, leather furniture that belonged in a CEO's penthouse, and abstract art on the walls that I knew for a fact wasn't hotel-owned, because I'd never approved the purchase. "Can I help you?" Sebastian said without looking up from his laptop. "I wanted to discuss my room," I said in Arthur's voice. "Front desk handles all guest complaints. I'm busy. The front desk told me to speak with you." He finally looked up, and I saw the moment he recognized me from yesterday, the poor man they tried to turn away. His expression curdled. "Mr. Penhaligon, is it? I don't have time for this. If you have an issue with your accommodations, I suggest you take it up with our guest services team. Or, if you're truly unsatisfied, you're welcome to check out early. No refund, of course." "Of course," I echoed. I was actually wondering about the hotel's history. I saw the portrait in the lobby. Elena Blackwood. She seems important. Something flickered across his face, annoyance, maybe, or disdain. She was the owner's wife. The hotel is named after her. She must have been remarkable. She was adequate for her time. The hotel has evolved significantly since her era. Evolved how? Mr. Penhaligon, I really don't have time for a history lesson. Was there something specific you needed? I pressed on. It's just that the portrait is so prominent. She must have been very hands-on with the hotel operations. She was the owner's wife, Sebastian repeated, his patience clearly wearing thin. She had opinions. But she was from a different background, you understand. Working class. She didn't really understand luxury hospitality the way we do now. She wanted to run this place like a bed and breakfast, all homey and personal. He practically sneered the words. We've had to work very hard to elevate the brand beyond her vision. Beyond her vision, I repeated softly. What was wrong with her vision? Nothing was wrong with it for a roadside motel. But the Elena Grand is a 5-star property. We cater to discerning clientele who expect a certain level of sophistication. Elena Blackwood wanted to hire housekeepers based on whether they seemed nice. I hire based on efficiency and presentation. She wanted to waste money on staff training and wellness programs. I've streamlined operations to maximize profit. She thought every guest should be treated the same. Can you imagine? Treating a tourist from Iowa the same as a Fortune 500 CEO? Every word was a knife in my chest. This was what he'd built on Elena's grave. A hierarchy where wealth determined worth, where efficiency trumped humanity, where profit margins mattered more than people. I see, I said quietly. Thank you for your time. Don't mention it. He was already looking back at his laptop, dismissing me. I walked out of his office in a daze. I'd gotten what I needed. His complete contempt for everything Elena had built, spoken in his own words. But hearing it out loud, hearing him reduce her to an obstacle he'd had to overcome, was almost more than I could bear. I went back to my room and sat on the bed, pulling out the burner phone. I pulled up the number I'd programmed. My personal attorney, Marcus Webb. Marcus, I said when he answered. It's Julian. I need you to do something for me. Of course. What do you need? I need you to call an emergency meeting of the Blackwood Hospitality Board of Directors. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., in the Elena Grand's ballroom. Tomorrow? Julian, that's very short notice. What's this about? Tell them it's a personnel matter requiring immediate attention. Tell them attendance is mandatory. And Marcus? I need you to bring our head of HR, our legal team, and a court reporter. There was a pause. Julian, what's going on? I'm fixing a mistake, I said. A mistake I should have fixed 3 years ago. I hung up and sent one more text, this one to my assistant. Need the security footage from the Elena Grand for the past week. All cameras, all areas. Have it ready for tomorrow morning. Then I allowed myself to look at Elena's portrait one more time, pulling up the photo I'd taken of it from the lobby. Tomorrow, I promised her painted face. Tomorrow I'll make this right. I spent my last day as Arthur Penhaligon seeing everything I'd been too removed to notice for 3 years. I saw Maria, the housekeeper, skip her lunch break because she was behind on her room quota. I saw her hands shake as she scrubbed a bathtub, the chemical burns from yesterday clearly getting worse. I saw Leo help an elderly couple with their luggage, only to be reprimanded by Jessica for taking too long, when the entire interaction had lasted 3 minutes. I saw Sebastian berate a new concierge to tears because she'd recommended a mid-range restaurant to a guest instead of one of the hotel's preferred partners, restaurants that paid kickbacks for referrals. I saw Jessica charge a family $45 for a fruit plate that cost the hotel $7 to prepare. I saw a maintenance worker, couldn't have been more than 19, nearly fall off a ladder while changing a chandelier bulb because he wasn't given a spotter. When he complained, his supervisor told him to stop being a baby, or he'd be fired. But I also saw the goodness that still existed, fighting to survive in this toxic environment. I saw a housekeeper slip extra chocolates onto a pillow for a little girl's birthday, even though it wasn't hotel policy. I saw a valet parker run 2 blocks in the rain to return a forgotten phone to a guest. I saw the kitchen staff pool their own money to buy a farewell cake for a dishwasher who was moving to another state. And I saw Leo, over and over, being kind in 100 small ways, giving directions with a smile, carrying groceries for a guest with a broken arm, staying an hour past his shift to help a confused elderly man book a car service. These were Elena's people, the ones who remembered what hospitality was supposed to mean. That evening, I was in the lobby when I witnessed the moment that would become the centerpiece of tomorrow's reckoning. It was late, nearly 11 p.m. Most of the guests had retired to their rooms. The lobby was quiet, just the soft ticking of the antique clock and the ambient music playing through hidden speakers. I was pretending to doze in one of the armchairs, but I was actually watching, waiting, observing. Jessica was at the front desk, theoretically working the night shift, but mostly scrolling through her phone. Sebastian emerged from his office carrying a bottle of champagne, Dom Perignon, which I knew we kept for VIP guests, and charged $400 per bottle. Is that from the cellar? Jessica asked, grinning. Mr. Chin checked out early and left it unopened. Shame to waste it. Sebastian popped the cork with practiced ease and poured 2 glasses. To another record-breaking quarter. They clinked glasses, giggling like conspirators. I watched, my hands clenched on the arms of the chair. I told you the new pricing strategy would work, Sebastian said, settling onto the desk's edge. Raise the rates, cut the labor costs, maximize the upsells. Blackwood should give me a bonus. Does he even pay attention to this place anymore? Jessica asked. I mean, he never visits. All those memos come from his assistant. Grief, Sebastian said dismissively. He's been useless since the wife died. Honestly, it's better this way. He stays in his penthouse feeling sad, and I actually run the business like a business should be run. Still, that portrait. Jessica trailed off, looking up at Elena's image. I know. It's hideous. I stopped breathing. It's so dated, Jessica continued, emboldened by champagne and the late hour. I mean, look at her dress. And those hands. God, they're so red and rough. She looks like she should be cleaning the toilets, not owning the building. Sebastian laughed, actually laughed. That's because she was cleaning toilets. She was a maid, remember? Julian Blackwood's ultimate rags-to-riches romance. Except he forgot the part where you don't hang a portrait of the rags in a luxury hotel. It brings down the whole aesthetic, Jessica agreed. Every time I have to tell the story to guests, I die a little inside. Oh yes, that's the late Mrs. Blackwood. She used to be a housekeeper here. Like, how is that aspirational? It's not. It's embarrassing. Sebastian took another sip of stolen champagne. I've been working on a proposal for the board. Replace the portrait with something modern. Abstract art, something sophisticated. Maybe that Banksy piece that's been floating around. Can you do that? I mean, Blackwood commissioned it. Blackwood doesn't care. He probably hasn't set foot in this lobby in months. And honestly, if we want to attract the right clientele, the ultra-wealthy, the celebrities, the people who actually matter, we need to stop glorifying the working class. This isn't a charity. It's a luxury brand. Jessica raised her glass in agreement. To luxury brands, and leaving the past where it belongs, in the past. To evolution, Sebastian added. And to finally running this place without sentimental nonsense getting in the way. They drank. And something inside me, something that had been bending under the weight of everything I'd witnessed, finally snapped. I didn't stand up immediately. I stayed in my chair, trembling, my vision blurred with rage and grief. They'd called Elena's portrait hideous. They'd mocked her for being working class. They'd laughed at the idea of honoring her memory. They'd looked at the woman who'd built this hotel, who'd fought for fair wages and health insurance for the staff, who'd personally interviewed every single employee to make sure they were kind people, who'd died believing that this place would continue to be a beacon of warmth and hospitality, and they'd called her an embarrassment. I thought about the first time I'd seen Elena, 27 years ago. She'd been on her knees scrubbing a stain out of a carpet, her hair falling out of its bun, her uniform too big because she was between paychecks and couldn't afford a new one that fit. I'd offered to help, and she'd looked up at me with those kind eyes and said, "You don't have to do that." "I want to," I'd replied. "Then thank you," she'd said. "Most people don't even see us. Invisible." That's what Sebastian wanted the staff to be. Invisible. Elena had made sure everyone was seen, valued, respected. And now these two parasites were drinking stolen champagne and plotting to erase her from the very building that bore her name. I pulled out the burner phone with shaking hands and sent a text to Marcus. Make sure the board meeting is at 8 a.m., not 9. And make sure Sebastian Vane and Jessica Martinez are both in attendance. Tell them it's mandatory for all department heads and senior staff. His reply came instantly. Done. Julian, are you okay? I wasn't okay. I wouldn't be okay until I'd torn down everything Sebastian had built, and started over. I texted back. Tomorrow. I stood up from the chair. Jessica and Sebastian were still talking, still drinking, completely unaware that the sleeping, homeless man in the corner was the owner of their entire world. I walked past them, past the portrait of my beautiful wife, into the elevator. As I rode up to my cramped room on the 6th floor, I planned. Tomorrow, I would walk into that ballroom as Julian Blackwood. Tomorrow, I would play every second of security footage. Jessica turning away the poor, Sebastian stealing champagne, staff being abused, guests being overcharged. Tomorrow, I would reveal every cut corner, every cruelty, every betrayal. But most importantly, tomorrow I would make sure everyone in that room understood what Elena Blackwood had actually been. Not an embarrassment, not a charity case, but the heart and soul of everything good this hotel had ever stood for. And anyone who couldn't see that, anyone who couldn't respect that, would no longer work for Blackwood Hospitality. In my room, I set an alarm for 5 a.m. I peeled off Arthur's costume piece by piece. The prosthetics, the makeup, the shabby clothes. In the shower, I washed away the grime and the pretense, watching it swirl down the drain. Tomorrow, Sebastian and Jessica would learn a fundamental truth. You can steal champagne, you can overcharge guests, you can abuse your staff. But if you insult the memory of a man's beloved wife, if you spit on her legacy and mock her sacrifice, you will face consequences that no amount of profit margins or efficiency protocols can protect you from. I lay down on the lumpy mattress one last time as Arthur Penhaligon. When I woke up, I would be Julian Blackwood again, and I would bring the thunder. At 5 a.m., I was already awake and dressed. Not in Arthur's costume, but in the custom suit I'd had my assistant deliver to a discreet location nearby. A charcoal Tom Ford with a silk tie in deep blue, Elena's favorite color. I shaved carefully, transforming my face from Arthur's stubbled confusion back to Julian's clean authority. I removed the last traces of makeup, the prosthetics, the carefully constructed disguise. In the mirror, Julian Blackwood stared back, older than I remembered, with new lines around my eyes that spoke of grief and anger, but recognizable. My phone, my real phone, had 17 missed calls and 43 emails from the board members, management team, and various department heads, all frantically trying to understand why they'd been summoned to an emergency 8 a.m. meeting with such short notice. I ignored all of them except one text from Marcus. Everything is ready. Security footage compiled. HR present. Court reporter standing by. Legal team in position. The ballroom is set up. Julian, whatever you're planning, I hope you know what you're doing. I texted back. I'm doing what I should have done 3 years ago. Thank you, Marcus. At 6 a.m., I left room 604 for the last time. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, needing the movement to burn off some of the nervous energy coursing through me. When I reached the lobby, it was still mostly empty, just the night shift staff preparing for the morning changeover. I saw Maria, the housekeeper, setting up her cart for the day. She looked exhausted, her hands wrapped in bandages now. Maria, I said softly. She turned, and her eyes went wide with shock. She'd seen me yesterday as Arthur, but now I was someone else entirely, someone in an expensive suit, someone with authority. Mr. Blackwood, she stammered. I need you to do something for me, I said. I need you to attend the meeting this morning in the ballroom. 8 a.m. It's mandatory for all staff. But my rooms. Well, wait. This is more important. She nodded, confused but obedient. I made the same rounds, quietly alerting the custodial staff, the maintenance workers, the kitchen staff. Everyone who'd been invisible to Sebastian's regime. Everyone who'd suffered in silence while I'd hidden in my penthouse and let it happen. At 7:30 a.m., I went to the ballroom. Marcus had done exactly what I'd asked. The room was set up theater style, with rows of chairs facing a large screen. A podium stood to one side. A court reporter sat at a small desk with her stenography machine. Our HR director, Patricia Chun, stood near the door with a thick folder. Our legal team occupied the front row, looking grim and professional. Julian, Marcus said when he saw me. I've compiled the security footage you requested. It's extensive and damning. Good. Do you want to review it first? No. I've lived it. I know what's on there. The board members started arriving at 7:45 a.m. There were 7 of them, successful business people I'd carefully selected over the years to help guide Blackwood hospitality. They took their seats in the front rows, whispering among themselves, clearly confused about the early morning summons. Department heads came next. The head chef, the head of housekeeping, not Sebastian's direct report, but a corporate position, the facilities manager, the events coordinator. They filled in the middle rows, equally perplexed. And then, at exactly 7:58 a.m., Sebastian and Jessica arrived. Sebastian looked annoyed at the early hour but impeccably dressed, as always. Jessica was beside him, slightly hungover from last night's stolen champagne, but trying to hide it behind makeup and coffee. They saw me at the front of the room and froze. I watched the calculation happen in Sebastian's eyes. He didn't recognize me as Arthur. Why would he? He'd never really looked at Arthur, had never seen him as a person worth remembering. But he knew something was wrong. You don't summon the entire leadership team and board of directors without cause. Mr. Blackwood, he said, pasting on his professional smile and striding forward with false confidence. I wasn't aware you'd be attending this meeting. If I'd known, I would have prepared a presentation on our quarterly performance. The numbers are exceptional. Sit down, Sebastian, I said quietly. Something in my voice made him stop. He sat. Jessica hovered near the back, clearly wanting to bolt, but Patricia gestured firmly for her to take a seat as well. At exactly 8 a.m., I closed the doors. The ballroom was full, not just of management and board members, but of staff. Real staff. The people who actually ran the hotel. Housekeepers in their uniforms. Kitchen workers still smelling of breakfast prep. Maintenance staff with tools on their belts. And Leo, sitting in the back, his eyes wide with confusion and something that might have been hope. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I began, standing behind the podium. My voice was calm, controlled. I'd practiced this in my head 100 times overnight. I've called this meeting because the Elena Grand is facing a crisis. Not a financial crisis. As Sebastian loves to point out, our profit margins are excellent. But a moral crisis. A crisis of values. A crisis that strikes at the very heart of why this hotel exists. Sebastian shifted uncomfortably. Jessica had gone pale. 3 years ago, my wife Elena passed away after a brutal fight with cancer. In my grief, I withdrew from the day-to-day operations of this hotel. I trusted my management team to uphold the values she and I had built this company on. I trusted that the legacy she left, a legacy of kindness, dignity, and respect for every single person who walked through these doors, would continue. I paused, looking around the room. I saw Maria clutching her bandaged hands. I saw Leo sitting forward in his seat. I saw the board members exchanging worried glances. I was wrong to trust blindly. I was wrong to hide in my grief. And I was wrong to let 3 years pass without seeing for myself what the Elena Grand had become. Mr. Blackwood, Sebastian interjected, standing. I'm not sure what this is about, but if there are concerns about hotel operations, I'm happy to address them in a private meeting. Sit down. The command in my voice was unmistakable. Sebastian sat. For the past 3 days, I continued, I've been living undercover in this hotel. I disguised myself as a working-class traveler named Arthur Penhaligon. I wanted to see how our guests were treated, how our staff behaved, whether the values Elena and I built this company on still existed. The room erupted in whispers. Sebastian's face had gone from confident to ashen. Jessica looked like she might be sick. Marcus, I said, turning to my attorney, please start the video. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered to life. And for the next hour, I showed them everything. The security footage was damning in its clarity. The cameras we'd installed throughout the hotel for safety purposes had captured every moment, every interaction, every cruelty. We watched Jessica tell Arthur that the hotel was fully booked when 12 rooms were available. We watched her make fun of the portrait of Elena with her coworker. We watched her charge the Morrison family an inflated rate while mocking them under her breath. We watched Sebastian steal champagne from the VIP cellar. We watched him berate Leo for being too friendly with guests. We watched him tell a housekeeper she was too slow while timing her with a stopwatch, pushing her to clean faster than was humanly possible. We watched the night conversation in the lobby. Every word, every mocking comment about Elena's portrait, every sneering reference to her working-class background, every plan to remove her image from the building. The room was silent except for the audio from the speakers. I watched the board members' faces grow progressively more horrified. I watched the staff members crying quietly. And I watched Sebastian and Jessica shrinking in their seats, trying to disappear. When the video ended, I didn't turn the lights back up immediately. I let the darkness sit, let the weight of what they'd just witnessed settle over everyone. Elena Blackwood, I said into that darkness, my voice rough with emotion, was the daughter of immigrants. Her father was a janitor. Her mother cleaned houses. Elena put herself through community college while working 3 jobs. She became a housekeeper at the Grandeur Plaza when she was 23 years old because it was the best job she could get. I advanced a slide. A photo of young Elena appeared on the screen, beautiful and bright-eyed in her housekeeper uniform. I met her when I was a bellhop at that same hotel. We were both invisible people, both working class, both struggling, but we saw each other, and we fell in love. Another slide. Our wedding photo, a simple courthouse ceremony, both of us in borrowed clothes. We saved every penny for 15 years. We worked ourselves to exhaustion. We sacrificed and struggled and dreamed. And when we finally had enough capital to take a risk, we didn't buy a mansion or a yacht. We built this hotel. Another slide. The grand opening of the Elena Grand, 15 years ago. Elena cutting the ribbon, her face radiant with joy. We built it on a simple principle. Treat every person who walks through these doors the way you would want to be treated. Whether they're a billionaire in a suite or a traveler on a budget in a standard room. Whether they're a guest or a housekeeper or a bellhop. Everyone deserves dignity. Everyone deserves respect. Everyone deserves to be seen. I turned the lights back on. Every eye in the room was on me. Elena commissioned that portrait herself, I said, gesturing toward the image of it on the screen. Not because she was vain, but because she wanted everyone who worked here to remember that they mattered, that their hands, their labor, their kindness was what made this place special. She insisted the artist paint her hands realistically, red and rough from years of cleaning, because she was proud of those hands. Those hands built this empire. I turned to look directly at Sebastian. And you called her an embarrassment. Sebastian opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing he could say. You turned away guests because they looked poor. I continued, my voice growing harder. You overcharged families who were struggling. You stole from the hotel's wine cellar. You created a culture of fear where staff were afraid to be kind because kindness was seen as inefficiency. And worst of all, you mocked the memory of the woman who made your entire career possible. I turned to the board members. I take full responsibility for letting this happen. I withdrew. I hid. I let my grief blind me to what was happening in Elena's hotel. But that ends today. I nodded to Patricia, our HR director. She stood, opening her folder. Sebastian Vane, she said formally, you are hereby terminated from your position as general manager of the Elena Grand, effective immediately, for gross misconduct including, but not limited to, theft of hotel property, creation of a hostile work environment, discrimination against guests based on socioeconomic status, and systematic violation of company values and policies. You will be escorted from the premises. Your final paycheck will be processed according to state law, but you will receive no severance package. Additionally, Blackwood Hospitality will be pursuing legal action for the theft and embezzlement documented in today's presentation. Sebastian stood on shaking legs. You can't do this. I've made this hotel more profitable than it's ever been. You made it profitable by betraying everything it stands for. I cut him off. Get out. Security guards, ones I'd personally selected for their professionalism, appeared at his side. He looked around the room as if expecting someone to defend him, but there was only silence and cold stares. As they escorted him out, I turned to Jessica. Jessica Martinez, Patricia continued. You are also terminated, effective immediately, for similar violations including discrimination, guest mistreatment, and disparagement of company values. Jessica burst into tears. Please, I need this job. I have rent. I have bills. You should have thought of that before you mocked my wife's portrait and refused service to people based on their appearance, I said. There was no mercy in my voice. You're done. She was escorted out, sobbing. The room remained silent. I could feel the tension, the uncertainty. People were waiting to see if there would be more firings, more recriminations. Instead, I called a name. Leo Santos. Please come forward. Leo stood slowly, his face pale, clearly terrified that he was about to be fired too. When he reached the front of the room, I extended my hand. Leo, I want to thank you. In 3 days of observation, you were the only member of management-facing staff who consistently demonstrated the values this hotel was built on. You helped an elderly woman with her phone for 20 minutes because it was the right thing to do. You gave a tired traveler water and a cookie when no one was watching. You were kind when kindness had been actively discouraged. Leo stared at me, not understanding. Effective immediately, you are promoted to guest relations manager. You'll be working with HR and our hospitality consultants to help rebuild the culture of this hotel. Your salary will be tripled, and you'll have full authority to hire and train a new team based on the values Elena and I originally established. Leo's eyes filled with tears. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me fix this. Yes, he said immediately. Yes, absolutely. The room broke into applause. It started with Maria and the other housekeepers, then spread through the staff members, and finally, even some of the board members joined in. When the applause died down, I turned back to the assembled crowd. We're making more changes, I said. Effective immediately, the Elena Grand will be implementing what I'm calling the Elena Standard. I nodded to Marcus, who distributed packets to all the board members and department heads. First, all hourly staff will receive an immediate 20% raise. This will be funded by cutting executive bonuses and eliminating unnecessary luxury expenses. I saw some of the board members wince, but none of them argued. Not after what they'd just witnessed. Second, we're restoring the comprehensive health insurance package that was eliminated 2 years ago. Additionally, we're adding mental health coverage and increasing paid time off. Third, we're implementing a new hiring and promotion protocol. Kindness and guest service will be weighted equally with efficiency metrics. We'll be conducting regular undercover audits, not just by me, but by a third-party firm, to ensure our values are being upheld. Fourth, we're establishing an anonymous reporting system where staff can report mistreatment, discrimination, or ethical violations without fear of retaliation. Fifth, we're capping room rates at reasonable levels and eliminating hidden fees. The Elena Grand will be profitable, but we will not gouge our guests. I paused, looking around the room. And finally, that portrait in the lobby? It stays. Forever. It will be accompanied by a plaque explaining who Elena Blackwood was, what she believed in, and why this hotel bears her name. Anyone who works here will be required to understand her story as part of their orientation. I turned to the board members directly. I know some of you are concerned about profit margins. I know you're worried that prioritizing kindness over efficiency will hurt our bottom line. But I'm going to tell you what Elena told me when we first opened this hotel. If we have to be cruel to be profitable, then we don't deserve to be in the hospitality business. The chairman of the board, Robert Chen, stood. He was a sharp businessman who I'd always respected for his directness. Julian, he said carefully, what you've shown us today is unconscionable. The board will fully support these reforms. But I have to ask, where do we go from here? You've fired your general manager and head receptionist. You've committed to significant operational changes. How do we implement all of this? I'm not asking you to implement it, I said. I'm going to do it myself. As of today, I'm taking a leave of absence from my CEO duties at the corporate level. I'm going to personally manage the Elena Grand for the next year. I'm going to rebuild this hotel from the ground up, the way Elena and I always intended it to be. There was a murmur of surprise. Additionally, I continued, I'm establishing the Elena Blackwood Foundation for Hospitality Workers. It will provide scholarships, training programs, and support services for people working in the service industry. Because Elena understood that the people who clean the rooms and carry the luggage and serve the food are the backbone of this industry, and they deserve better than what we've been giving them. Robert Chen nodded slowly. The board will support this, Julian. We should have been paying closer attention. We all share responsibility for what happened here. Thank you, Robert. I turned back to the full room. To the staff who've been suffering under this regime, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry I let my grief blind me to your pain. But I promise you, that changes today. Any staff member who wants to stay and help rebuild this hotel under the new standards is welcome. Anyone who doesn't believe in what we're trying to do is free to leave with a positive reference. Maria raised her hand tentatively. I nodded at her. Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Will you really be here? Every day. Every day, I promised. I'll be in the lobby, in the kitchens, in the housekeeping offices. I'll be visible, accessible, because that's what Elena would have done. Another housekeeper spoke up. What about the people Sebastian fired? There were 3 good people he let go just this month for being too slow. Patricia, I said, turning to our HR director, please reach out to everyone Sebastian terminated in the past 6 months. Offer them their jobs back with back pay and an apology. Patricia made a note. Consider it done. We spent the next 2 hours going through the specifics. Leo worked with HR to outline the new training program. The head chef discussed menu changes to eliminate the overpriced luxury items that were pure markup. The facilities manager talked about repairs that had been delayed due to budget cuts. Throughout it all, I kept looking at the screen, at the frozen image of Elena's portrait. I'm fixing it, I thought. I'm finally fixing it. The meeting finally concluded around noon. As people filed out, many stopped to shake my hand, to thank me, to welcome me back. The staff members especially seemed lighter, like a weight had been lifted. But before I could leave, Robert Chen approached with the other board members. Julian, he said quietly, we need to discuss the legal ramifications of Sebastian's termination. He's going to fight this. Let him, I said. We have documentation, video evidence, testimony from dozens of staff members and guests. He stole from the hotel, created a hostile work environment, and systematically violated every policy we have. He won't win. He might try to sue for wrongful termination. Then we'll bury him in evidence. Marcus has already prepared a comprehensive file. I paused. Robert, I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this to be vindictive. I'm doing this because if we let him get away with it, we're sending a message that this behavior is acceptable. That profit matters more than people. That's not the message I want to send. Robert nodded. We support you. All of us do. What Sebastian did was unforgivable. After they left, I found myself alone in the ballroom. I walked to the front of the room and looked at the screen, still showing Elena's portrait. Did I do the right thing? I asked the image. In my mind, I could hear her response. She'd had a saying she used whenever I struggled with difficult decisions. The right thing is rarely the easy thing, Julian. But it's always the necessary thing. Firing Sebastian and Jessica wasn't easy. Committing to major operational reforms wasn't easy. Taking a year away from the corporate office to personally rebuild this hotel wasn't easy. But it was necessary. My phone buzzed. A text from Leo. Mr. Blackwood, there are reporters outside. They've heard about the management changes. What should we tell them? I smiled. This, at least, was simple. Tell them the truth, I texted back. Tell them the Elena Grand is recommitting to its founding values. And tell them Julian Blackwood is back. I walked out of the ballroom and through the lobby. Staff members straightened when they saw me, but instead of fear, I saw something different in their eyes. Hope, maybe, or relief. The portrait of Elena dominated the wall behind the reception desk, just as it always had. But now, instead of being an embarrassment to be mocked and plotted against, it would serve its original purpose, a reminder of where we came from and what we stood for. I stopped beneath it, looking up at my wife's painted face. I'm home, I whispered, and I'm staying. 6 months later, the Elena Grand was transformed. Not the building itself. That was still the same beautiful structure Elena and I had designed. But the spirit of the place was different. Alive. Warm. I kept my promise. I came to the hotel every single day. Not to the penthouse office, but to the lobby, the kitchens, the housekeeping offices. I learned the names of every single staff member. I asked about their families, their dreams, their concerns. Leo had proven to be everything I'd hoped for and more. He'd built a training program that emphasized empathy and cultural sensitivity. He'd hired a diverse team of front desk staff who genuinely cared about guests. And he'd become a mentor to the younger employees, teaching them that hospitality was about creating moments of kindness in an often unkind world. Maria was still with us, now leading the housekeeping department. Her hands had healed, and she'd told me that for the first time in years, she actually enjoyed coming to work. The reviews had changed too. Where once guests had complained about cold service and nickel-and-diming, now they raved about the warmth of the staff and the reasonable prices. Our occupancy rates were actually higher than they'd been under Sebastian's regime, proving what Elena had always known. Kindness was good business. The Elena Blackwood Foundation was flourishing. We'd already provided scholarships to 17 hospitality students and partnered with 3 local programs to provide job training for people transitioning out of homelessness. And the portrait stayed, of course. We'd added the plaque I'd promised. Elena Maria Blackwood, 1969 to 2022. From housekeeper to visionary, she believed that true luxury lies not in gold leaf and crystal, but in treating every person with dignity, kindness, and respect. This hotel stands as a testament to her values and her unwavering belief that hospitality begins with the heart. On the 6-month anniversary of the board meeting, I stood in the lobby at dusk, watching the staff interact with guests. A young couple was checking in, clearly nervous about the prices, and I watched the front desk agent, one of Leo's new hires, offer them a complimentary upgrade because it was their anniversary. Leo approached me, tablet in hand. "Mr. Blackwood, the quarterly numbers are in, and we're up 17% in guest satisfaction, 12% in occupancy, and 8% in overall revenue. The board is thrilled. How's staff retention? Turnover is down 63%. People want to work here again." I nodded, satisfied. "Thank you, Leo." "No, sir. Thank you for giving us our hotel back." After he walked away, I stood alone beneath Elena's portrait. The lobby was busy with guests and staff, full of life and warmth and laughter. This was what we dreamed of. This was the legacy Elena deserved. "I fixed it," I said quietly to her painted face. "It took me too long, and I almost lost everything we built. But I fixed it." In the reflection of the polished marble floor, I could almost see her standing beside me, her hand in mine. "I know you did," I imagined her saying. "I'm proud of you." I touched my wedding ring, the way I always did when I missed her most. "I'm going to keep fixing it," I promised. "Every day, for the rest of my life." "Because that's what you would have done." A family walked past me, parents and 2 young children, and the little boy pointed at the portrait. "Mommy, who's that lady?" The mother smiled. "That's Mrs. Blackwood, sweetie. She built this beautiful hotel. She wanted everyone who stayed here to feel welcome and safe." "She looks nice," the boy said. "She was," I interjected softly. They turned, surprised to see me there. "She was the nicest person I ever knew." The mother's eyes widened as she recognized me from the press coverage. "Mr. Blackwood?" "Just Julian," I said. "Welcome to the Elena Grand. I hope you enjoy your stay." As they walked toward the elevators, I heard the little boy ask, "Daddy, why is that man crying?" "Sometimes," his father replied gently. "We cry when we're happy." He wasn't wrong. These were happy tears, grateful tears. 3 years ago, I'd lost Elena. 6 months ago, I'd almost lost her legacy. But tonight, standing in the lobby of the hotel that bore her name, surrounded by staff who embodied her values and guests who felt her warmth, I knew that Elena Blackwood's true portrait wasn't the oil painting on the wall. It was this: the kindness in Leo's training program, the dignity in Maria's healed hands, the welcome in a front desk agent's smile, the warmth in a child's voice saying, "She looks nice." Elena lived on in every small act of hospitality, every moment of compassion, every person who was seen and valued and treated with respect. And I would spend the rest of my life making sure that portrait, that living, breathing legacy of love, would never fade. "Welcome home, my love," I whispered to the lobby, to the portrait, to the memory of the woman who taught me that true wealth wasn't measured in profit margins or quarterly reports, but in the kindness we showed to each other. Welcome home. 1 year after the reforms began, Julian Blackwood stood before the United Hospitality Association to accept the Elena Blackwood Memorial Award for Excellence in Compassionate Service, an award he'd established, but which was being given for the first time to the Elena Grand itself. My wife used to say that we judge a society by how it treats its most vulnerable members, Julian said in his acceptance speech. But she'd extend that to businesses as well. We judge a hotel not by how it treats its VIP guests, but by how it treats the tired traveler, the overwhelmed family, the person who can barely afford a room but desperately needs a safe place to rest. He looked out at the audience, hundreds of hospitality professionals from around the world. The Elena Grand failed that test. Under my negligent leadership, we became exactly what my wife would have hated, a place where money determined worth, where profit mattered more than people, where kindness was seen as inefficiency. But we changed, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. And in changing, we discovered what Elena always knew. that true luxury isn't found in gold fixtures or champagne service. It's found in the smile of a staff member who genuinely cares. It's found in the relief of a guest who feels seen and valued. It's found in the dignity of work done with pride and purpose. He held up the award, a crystal sculpture of hands reaching toward each other. This award is really for every housekeeper who's ever been told to be invisible. For every front desk agent who's been pressured to judge guests by their appearance. For every hospitality worker who's been made to feel that their kindness is a weakness. You are not invisible. Your kindness is not weakness. You are the heart of this industry, and you deserve better than what we've been giving you. The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. Afterward, as Julian left the stage, a young woman approached him, a hospitality student. Her name tag said, "Interning at a luxury resort in Dubai." "Mr. Blackwood," she said shyly, "I just wanted to thank you. I've been working in hotels for 3 years, and I've been told over and over that I'm too friendly, too chatty, too informal. Your story made me realize I wasn't wrong. The system was." Julian smiled. "What's your name?" "Amara." "Amara, don't ever let anyone tell you that kindness is a flaw. The hospitality industry needs more people like you. It needs more people like my wife. Promise me you'll stay kind, even when it's hard." "I promise," she said. As she walked away, Julian felt a familiar warmth in his chest. Elena would have loved her, would have seen in her the same spark that had drawn him to Leo, to Maria, to all the staff members who'd held on to their humanity despite a system that tried to crush it. He pulled out his phone and looked at his wallpaper, a photo of Elena on their last anniversary, laughing at something he'd said, her eyes full of love and life. "We're doing it," he told her image. "We're changing things. One hotel at a time, one kind gesture at a time, one person at a time. I hope you're proud." In his heart, he knew she was. Because Elena Blackwood's legacy wasn't just a hotel or a foundation or an award. It was a revolution of kindness, spreading from the Elena Grand to hotels around the world, proving that you could be profitable and compassionate, efficient and empathetic, successful and kind. And it all started with one man who loved his wife enough to fight for her memory, to defend her values, and to prove that the greatest luxury of all is being treated like you matter, no matter who you are, where you come from, or how much money you have in your pocket.